All right, kick it off.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Darren Diess. I'm with Eventology Fundraising. Today, I'm joined by my partner, Michelle Gilmore, and our special guest, a good friend of mine for quite a while, Rachel Mason. Rachel's just an amazing individual, human being in person, great Rotarian. Rachel and I met through Rotary. Rachel, I can sing your praises all day long. You know that. And Rachel is actually the CEO of the Fallbrook Regional Medical District. So Rachel, thank you very much for joining us. And Michelle, thank you again for logging in. Someday we're all going to be together in a room again. I can't wait. But right now we're not. We're all out on a job. I apologize for some background noise. We're doing some construction here. So if you hear some hammers, I am going to mute myself as much as I can. So I apologize for that in advance. But Michelle, we've had a lot of fun through these COVID times. I know we've talked about maybe we should update our book, Eventology Fundraising, because that was pre-COVID. We could add a whole nother chapter with all the things we've learned through COVID. But tell us a little bit of kind of what you're doing and what's going on.
Sounds good. Thank you. For those of you who haven't met me, I'm Michelle Gilmore. I'm the co-author of Eventology, the science behind nonprofit fundraising, with my partner, Darren Diess. And also I'm the Senior Director of Development for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation in San Diego. So I've had a busy fundraising season from COVID, shutdown, pause fundraising, hit the ground running on August 1st. And then I just finished a big virtual event, which, you know, was rough. I'm not gonna lie. But Darren and I, as he mentioned, have been pivoting and reimagining, those two words that I'm really hating a lot right now, throughout this time with some clients and friends and comrades. And so we have seen a lot of success, some not so successful virtual fundraising initiatives. And I'm really excited that Rachel's here, because Rachel has a perspective of both a fundraiser and is currently in a funder role. And I'll let her talk a little bit about that. But Rachel, welcome. And as other people enter, I'll be adding them to the mix. As you do walk in, if you'll mute yourself, and then we are going to do a few housekeeping things. We're going to do a Q&A, and typically we have a bigger audience here. So what we've been able to do with this one, with a little bit more intimate setting, is we're going to have a true roundtable. So be prepared to talk and ask your questions, but go ahead and throw them in the chat to kick us off at the beginning. And as we get through our presentation, we'll let you unmute yourself. We will allow you to unmute yourself and chat with us and ask your burning questions, because Rachel and Darren and I may have answers, and if we don't, we might know where to find them. So we'll be here to do that. So thank you.
The good thing, we're joined by some people with knowledge on this phone. Debbie Roth, thank you very much for joining us as well. And Jennifer, thank you. Yeah, this will be a lot of fun. So
and
Rachel,
Hi, Jean. Hi, Jean.
Rachel, we say we jump right in. Or Michelle, you and I put together a survey a while ago, and you want to share some of those results as we kick it off?
Yes. I thought we would start with a survey. And some of you have been on our posts, our workshops in the past, our roundtable discussions, and you know we do some polls here and there. And Darren and I sent out a research survey. Some of you may have taken it, to try to get a little data from our 2020 fundraising, particularly as it relates to virtual events and its success and or not so I don't like the word failure, so we're not going to say that word today, but to see how successful they have been, and then kind of share that out on this call and in the future. So some of the data points that we have pulled, and excuse me because I'm reaching over to another computer, is we asked 100 people first of all, what size of the organization that they're coming from and what their role was. So this was a split between organization of under 100,000 and over 100 but below 500,000 in terms of organization size. So pretty much 50-50, small orgs, big orgs. The roles that the people who took the surveys played, mostly development. We had 20% executive directors. We had 34% in development, and then some event specialists and independent consultants. And in terms of the questions that we wanted to find out answers for, we asked, in 2020, did you convert an in-person event to a virtual event? Yes or no? And then the yes or the no prompted the next rounds of questions. So yeses were 50%, no were 42%, and then planning for Q4 was 10%. And then if you answered yes, the question was, did the results of the virtual event meet your financial goal, stewardship, cultivation goal, awareness goal, or all of the above? I thought this one was interesting, Darren, and so I want to chat about this one. So let me repeat it. The question was, did the results of your virtual fundraising event this year, the one you pivoted, hate that word, did it meet your financial goal? No one answered that yes. So it wasn't the only one. So there were some people who said all of the above coming in the lineup. Then stewardship cultivation, 33% of the people said that was what was met. That data point was met, their stewardship or cultivation goal. Awareness was 44%, and then all of the above was another 42%. So I thought that was interesting, Darren. Let's talk a little bit about that and see about virtual events, and you've seen firsthand what's been going on with them.
Yeah, definitely have with virtual events on both sides of the spectrum. I've had a few clients where we've done virtual events. You know, their goals were, one of them was 100,000, one of their goals was 250,000. And both of those, the last two events, we came in over and above the goals. So that was huge, but I have to say that both of those events did everything different than you do from the traditional gala, because 90% or more of the fundraising was done before the event actually happened. And I think the train wreck I see coming for a lot of nonprofits that, you know, speaking with and that are thinking about whether they're Q4 events or even Q1, Q2, who still think, no, we are going live. We're going to do it in person because, damn it, I'm sick of it. I just want to go see people again. I don't see that happening. I really don't. So you can be as stubborn as you want and want to hold that in-person event. But if you're in the state of California where I'm at, I really don't see that happening anytime soon, at least all in person. If we do it, it's probably going to be a hybrid version of that. And we're going to be half in person, half live and half online with live stream fundraising. But the projections in where we've seen the huge success is the expenses are so far less, which is great. But I think the one thing that Michelle, that we realize that a lot of nonprofits are not doing is they're not realizing how much time it's going to take to make that virtual event successful. And I know I can call on Jennifer, because Jennifer, I know you just did this with your golf tournament and how much more you had to do. I mean, just to get everything happening before your event, there's so much more work involved, whether it's a golf tournament or whether it's a gala. There's so much work you have to do ahead of the event to get ready for it, to make it a success. If you're doing that virtual event, it's all about that timeline and what that run of show looks like. And there's just so much more prep involved. It takes a lot of your volunteer time and resources just planning those events. Yeah.
And Rachel, I want to bring you in on this too, because we were talking to everybody right before you all got on, and we were talking about virtual events and if it's worth it, kind of. And you heard for the data points that one of the data points was, hey, was the stewardship piece, did that, meet its goal, or the awareness? So Rachel, what's your opinion, my friend, about currently right now, like the virtual events that you're seeing and what their value is or not value? Rachel. You're on mute, Rachel. You're on mute, sorry.
1,000 Zoom meetings and I still screw that up, like everybody else, right? So now that I'm in a role where I'm not the fundraiser and we are a grant maker, what I'm seeing is that those organizations that were positioned for individual donor giving programs, they're doing better with not necessarily holding an event, because they can make that direct appeal. We are all, as they say, in this boat together. Everybody's living through COVID. So everyone understands the fact that, your services, your budget is impacted by this. So why run an event when what's really needed is direct connection with your donor? So put your efforts there. Ask, explain what's going on, be real. If you have to have an event because for some reason someone says you have to have an event, scale down. It doesn't need to be giant, and don't reinvent the wheel. Look to see what your peers are doing. Events are going to be rough for a while. Be creative. Don't do it.
Yeah. Do something else.
I like that. Be creative. Don't do it. I
Yeah,
think you can definitely do it if you've got the right donor database. But I think, you know, some challenges we've seen, some of these nonprofits, they want to host it and just hope people will come. And
Yeah.
I have not seen a virtual event happen yet where, you know, hope is a really good, that hope is a solid plan. If you've got a strong database and you've got some relationships you can pull on, you can use an event to kind of serve a purpose, like, you know, recognition. With virtual events, there's so much opportunity to have all this recognition that can be shared and shared over and over again. So plan your event for that and make that event, what Michelle and I have said in our book, Eventology, is, you know, make that event a celebration. So if you want to raise $300,000, start working on it, raise $260,000, and then throw an event, host it, and kind of top it off. But if you're going all in, we're going to raise $300, and we hope people log on. And by the way, we're giving away free tickets, because anyone with a free ticket always spends all kind of money at every event that they attend. So just come up with look at it differently. So Michelle, I know we got an agenda we put out, and I don't even think we're on our agenda yet. Let's jump right into that. Do you want to?
Yeah. In fact, I want to do one more data point from the survey, and then we're going to go into our questions for Rachel, because there's a reason why she's here.
Yes.
So one of the things that the last questions, I just want to share the results, and everybody who's on here, I will send their survey results to you all just so you can see what it looks like. But one of them said, if you answered no to Q3, so you didn't have one, why did you decide not to host a virtual event? So staff bandwidth was one question. No data to determine if the expense would warrant the results. That was a popular one at 25%. We didn't have data from last year to compare. My board wasn't like, yeah, let's just try it and see what happens. They didn't love that idea, so we couldn't do it. Unfavorable response from board or stakeholders, 12%. We chose an alternate strategy for 2020, 25%. And then all of the above was high at 37%. So a combination of factors. Kind of speaks to what you were saying, Rachel. It speaks to Darren, what you're talking about, is that fundraising, I'd like to say too that, it's been a while since March 13th, right? So we're here on October 14th, and that amount of time, everyone's in virtual event burnout. We're fatigued. We're Zoom meeting out. I want to see people. I want a person next to me, right? We all feel like that. But that's a real thing to consider too, because, you're spending hours and hours. Jennifer, you just did a golf tournament. You're spending hours to plan that, and for a 45-minute show to do what, right? To hopefully get 1 or 2 donations. I like Darren's plan better. Do the fundraising, call on the phone and ask for funds, ask for grants and all that good stuff. See how much you can get in, and then celebrate it at an annual meeting in the spring, on a Zoom call. Anyway, so Darren, let's
go Zoom calls.
Right? Let's do, I'm going to let you pull up, if you have it in front of you, because I'm looking at the survey.
Yep.
Our first question for
I love the first one. It's how do you budget for 2021 when 2020 results pretty much sucked? Yeah. For most organizations, Rach, I know you as a funder, you get to work with several different smaller and even larger nonprofits, and everyone's got to kind of put up to you. It's like, how do you do that going forward? What are your recommendations?
Well, and for the folks who don't know me, I've spent about 15 years being a fundraiser before I landed the dream job of being a funder.
It's not nice to brag, Rachel. It's really not.
I know, sorry.
Everyone's jealous.
Sorry, not sorry. So here's something that's interesting. The Fallbrook Regional Health District, we provide our grants. Our grant distributions are done quarterly, but we have one grant window of application, and that's done for about a month. And we opened our grant window in 2020 on March 1st with an expected closure date of March 31st, pretty much kind of keep that 1 month window, right? And obviously COVID, lockdown, shutdown, changes, but most of our agencies put forward an expectation of what their 2021 year would look like. And as a funder, we can't expect you to know the reality. We had you put forward what you think you were going to get. We are now getting first quarter results from those groups that we funded. And we are already seeing that there's no way that they were able to do what they projected they would do with the budget they said that they were going to do it with. And you're going to see different groups. So we've got about 17 organizations that we chose to fund this year. We had 23 organizations that applied. We're the funder, and we are beholden to a community whose property taxes help to provide these grant funds. I swear I'm going to get back to the question. The reality is that we're still people. And so our board, the staff, we understand that agencies can't do exactly business as usual because life is not going to allow it. So we're being flexible. And what I'm getting is I'm getting calls from executive directors that said, hey, I said I was going to do this in my grant. We can't meet in person. So we're going to do this. And it's cost us a little more in this and a little less in that. Is it all right if we use the grant money that way? And I don't know how other funders are, but I would venture to guess they're going to give the same answer we have, which is yes, do it. Great. Thanks for reaching out to us. Thanks for having a smart budget narrative so that you can explain to me, hey, we usually spend, $5,000 on these widgets that we give to the client that does this. We can't see the client, so instead we're spending the money on this to keep them connected. Whatever your story is. So the reality is, how are you going to budget for next year? Be honest. Try and figure it out. This is a good year for hard decisions to be made. If you had a lot of kind of dead weight in your organization, this is the year you're going to cut it. It's going to hurt. Sorry. But this is
Rachel,
also
you say you said this is a good year to kind of make those changes. Michelle, the one thing that you and I have talked about multiple times in our book and just with every client we talked about is how many people are afraid to make a change. Yeah. If you've had that, we have to do it this way because that's what we've always done. If that's been your mentality, your mantra, this is a 100% perfect reason to get rid of that stuff. Let that go. Make the change.
Yeah. This is the year for change, whether you want it or not.
Right.
Yeah. So you're gonna have to take those results and build it into next year's budget and be a lot more flexible with what you expect to come out of it. I think your funders are going to understand. We're living it too.
And I think
funders and donors.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Not just the funders. I mean, if you're going, you kind of take the same message. Everything Rachel's kind of sharing is kind of, if you can speak to and if you'd be willing to speak to your donors just like you would a funder, you're going to really start to build that relationship up because the donors want to know. They may not know they want to know, but when you start sharing that information and listen, we plan to do this, but now we have to do this. Like, oh yeah, no, we got you. Yeah. What do you need? Rachel, we brought this up. We were having a little bit of conversation about pet shelters, you kind of brought up and, how, some of them are just, how do we do it? And you said, the shelters just got cleared. Everybody's got pets. What a perfect time for them to say, we need resources now more than we ever did. We have all these new donors that have adopted pets and that are in love with their furry little friends that you're not really asking for money because you're not thinking to go out that way. And what a great opportunity it is to make that ask.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, and I think there's a lot of grace, like we talked similar to what you're saying in terms of a funder's lens, for sure. If people are coming to you and saying, we're trying our best, we put the program funding here and we hit the ground running, but obviously we hit a brick wall. So can you be a little flexible with us? And you're saying, yes, we're also seeing that from, in-kind donors, AV companies, right? People who you know, you're having to open up a whole new brand of business, a whole new area of expertise out of need, and also the want to support people's events and virtual versions of whatever might be going on. So yeah, I see it in a lot of different arenas, but it's better to ask, because as even just similar to the regular old fundraising theme, they're not going to say yes if you don't ask. So right. Same thing. So that takes us to the next question, Darren, which I think is great. I'll let you read it to Rachel, and then we'll get some other people involved if they'd like to offer their 2 cents as well.
Well, I think the question's, no, I wouldn't say it's been answered by any means, but we did kind of hit on it. It said, what is the case for support that you need to include?
Yeah.
You know, how do you build that case for support going into that 2021 budget?
Yeah. Well, I want to be a little bit more specific about this. I want to ask Rachel, what do we absolutely need to include in our case for support? If I'm submitting a thing to you, what has to, like, you're looking at it and you're like, no, I'm not even going to read this because it doesn't have this.
Right. So, you know, we're a regional funder. Okay. So first and foremost, if you can't tell me what you're doing in our region, you've missed the boat. Okay, that goes all the time. The other part is, what's the reality of the impact of COVID in my region? So whether you're human services, social services, medicine, animal welfare, I don't care what your mission is, it's impacted by COVID. So your case for support really ought to be able to explain what you're doing. How is COVID affecting your agency? For the first time ever, I would tell you, it's okay to talk about what you as an agency need in a case for support, which is different. Normally I say, don't tell me about how you need new desks and you need new IT, blah, blah, blah. Your case for support should be about your client. Well, this is different. And if you are an arts organization, you have been impacted because you can't do the arts to the people. So maybe now you're calling on your friend Pete here to come in and put in AV and IT stuff, which that is a first time case for support that we as a district would say, that's a really true, solid need added in. So your case for support should always talk about what the client's needs are. But for the first time, since this is going to be another 18 months minimum that we're doing this, it's okay, I think, to ask from an agency standpoint. We want to serve these people. This is still their need. This is what we need to do to make it happen and why. And then explain how you're going to make that difference. How this thing that you want funded, or these people, extra people, or whatever, explain that. But you got to be really logical. I don't know your organization, and even if you think I do, make it so obvious and clear that random person off the street can figure it out. That's what has to be in your case for support.
That's great. Any questions around that from our audience? I see some fabulous fundraisers here, so I know you guys are in this world of creating case for support. Anything you want to chime in with, Kathy, Debbie, Jen?
Come on, Jean, you always have a question.
Jean's got funding. She says, hey, I've got funding. Let's hear it, Jean.
For the 6 organizations that I represent in the Coachella Valley, I find that the most important thing for us to succeed in this time and for the upcoming future is to have an executive director who's on the ball. If we don't have an executive director who's going to know how to research what, for instance, Rachel is offering, the organization is just going to collapse. So that's number one. And fortunately, on 2 occasions of the 6, I have executive directors who have really approached our community needs with that background. In one of my organizations, which is the Palm Springs Opera Guild, we're an arts organization. We bring the opera singers, the young opera singers, in to compete for a $40,000, it's been up till now, over $40,000 prize for, I think it's 7 or 8 winners or 4 or 5 winners. My head isn't straight on the numbers. We can't offer that to our membership. Our membership relies upon giving them something in reality, not in virtual reality, but in reality. So you have different budgeting problems. Now we're researching outdoor events which we can bring our talent and separate people in a healthy fashion. On the other side of the coin, I deal with the public school system, bringing art to children 1st to 3rd grade. It represents a whole different avenue of problems because children from 1st to 3rd grade are not sophisticated enough, even though we try to do this virtually. Yeah. So we have to employ the teacher that the child is comfortable with. As far as fundraising is concerned, we had some events in one of my organizations that was producing a gala in last April and celebrating one of our personalities who's very generous and very popular in the community. That had to be canceled. The money that was received was put into I don't know if it's an escrow or a restricted account. And we then asked our donors for that event, do you require this back? We cannot give you a date when this will occur. In almost 99%, they said yes. Now they're coming back to me to make a decision about when do I think this can occur so that we can honor our obligation to 300 people who are coming to an event which celebrates what we do and also celebrates honoring a particular personality. Now I feel that we can't offer that security. And now I think the important thing that you have to do is to go back to your donors, even if they're coming because of that personality, and say, this is what she supports. Would you be comfortable leaving that with the organization to get us through this difficult time? There are so many different ways you have to go with all of this. So all I can say is, I'm pleased to join these webinars with you. I've learned a great deal. I'm an AFP member. I just hope that the little guy is going to be able to do something to succeed. We've had over 1,000 nonprofit charities in the desert. They don't exist. A lot of them don't exist anymore. We're in a very difficult time. And this is a very generous community. So all I can say is I will come to everything that you have to offer because I want to learn as much as I can to see how I can help. Not only the boards that I sit on, and I'm a parliamentarian and a past president on all of them. I want to bring other knowledge to organizations just to see them get through this time. So thank you for what you're doing. Both of you.
Well, thank you. We're happy to have you here every time. And one thing, Jean, that you bring up, actually 2 things I want to talk about, and I want to pitch that to Rachel as well. One thing that you just mentioned, I think is really worth spending time with, and I wish people were really thinking about this a little bit more, and that is that, you know, if you've had to cancel an event and you have people who've said, yeah, go ahead and keep my money, just let me know when we're going to do this. We do need to offer something for that because, as you're saying, they're sitting around waiting like, well, are we going to have this event, or is it going to be virtual, or is it going to be in person? And I'm not comfortable with that. So I think it is smart for you to create some kind of really sound communication to those people, to those donors, and let them know that, you know, it's unfortunate that this has continued as in the way that it has, but we are good stewards of your donations, and here's what that money is doing. Here's what that money is going to go to, either in 2021 or now. And I absolutely think you create a communication like that. And then maybe do a nice video about that person, about your honoree, and send that out to them directly into their inbox and say, this is our little tribute video that we had because Pete helped us make it. And it looks great and it honors that person. And so then you're sending that out as like a confirmation of that celebration is still intact, rather than having some big, try to like do too many things with a virtual event. Thoughts, guys?
Gene, I want to jump in on that real quick, only because you talked about, you had this event that was planned in April and you've postponed it and postponed it. In that scenario, I've personally done 2 events with kind of this exact piece in mind, where we were really doing the event ultimately just to serve that ticket that we've already sold. Because a lot of events that canceled in March, April, May, they had tickets and sponsors, going for the 6 months prior to that. So we were able to deliver a 45-minute to an hour program honoring special guests, with, we've done award shows just in the desert. We did it for One Future Coachella Valley. So we honored all of the administrators and staff, and we had 5 different honorees, but we were able to do a huge shout out to all the sponsors, everyone who donated at the sponsorship level. We still did an ask. We didn't do an auction. It was a different type of an event, but we really just put on an award show for 45 minutes, did it online. And they had a huge success because so many people logged in that would have never even come to the event before. So it is possible. It may be something to consider. I know, Michelle, we need to get in, and I hear those guys making noise, so I'm going to hit my mute button.
Okay, so then Rachel, the last question, and I think you have it in front of you. Remind me what it says. Do you have it in front of you? Darren, do you have it in front of you?
Is 2021, is 2021 the year of the grant writer? And what a perfect person to ask this question to, because when I first met Rachel, it's exactly what she was doing. She was the proposal writer, the grant. I mean, that was her everything. And boy, look at this, this has changed. You went from grant writer to executive director to just, I'm giving money away. So you've earned that job. You didn't get it just because you're cute.
Yeah. So is 2021 the year of the grant writer? Yes, with the caveat. And Jean kind of pointed it out, you need to have the right kind of executive leadership in an organization to make a grant work. You can have a grant writer send out proposals all day long, but if that grant writer doesn't know the organization well, if your budget isn't well structured, if you can't comment on outcomes, impact, programming, it's going to fail. So you can be the world's best grant writer, but if the organization completely sucks, it doesn't matter. Your grant writer is maybe going to help you with your impact.
Tell us how you really feel there, Rachel.
I'll use cuss words. It happens sometimes. You have to have an organization that has its shit together. There, I said it. If they don't have it together, the grants aren't going to do any good, but get a good grant writer. Understand you're going to have to invest in that grant writer so that they can have a direct pipeline to the executive director, that they understand the programs, that you as an organization have your budget clearly defined. As a funder, I'm looking at your budget. And I'm not just looking at the budget you sent me. Chances are I looked at your 990 too. And if the budget you sent me is full of shit and it doesn't match your 990, I'm not dumb. They have to match. So yes, you're the grant writer. But make sure that they have good access to your executive leadership. That has to be hand in hand. So
I have a question for you, and this is it just popped in my head. Jean, you said there are over 1,000 small nonprofits, and the ones that are smaller, the ones that are getting, kind of going away. And we're in the Coachella Valley alone, there are 1,000 nonprofits.
No,
and
she said there's 1,000 nonprofits that are folding.
No. A lot of those, no. A lot of those are folding. Darren's a terrible listener. Don't listen to what he says.
True. What she said. When she's over there on me.
What she said. So, but if some of those small guys, and they're in the arts, they're all serving some type of arts, like the arts organization that's helping students learn arts from K through 3, and there's somebody who's trying to get a virtual arts program connecting all the museums to the kids. Would it be valuable? Is there a scenario for these organizations to get together, combine, and collaborate and submit a grant in that way? Is that even possible? And what do you guys think about that?
I don't think you can mix apples and oranges, but what you can do, for instance, if you're in the field of arts alone, I'm not talking about feeding the needy and finding homes for the people whose homes burnt down. What you do is you go to the largest structure you can find. For instance, the Palm Springs school system, which is all the schools here. They run programs that involve the same kind of things that some of these little organizations are doing. So we find a major donor who will underwrite to publicize and produce a small program to add to what they're giving. And that becomes a virtual program. And what you're doing is not making money necessarily, but what you're doing is letting your membership know you're alive and you're still out there, because membership is down in every organization. We estimate less, well, at least 50% of our membership in a lot of organizations are down. 50%, and it's going higher because they want something for what they're doing. It's called reinforcing positive thinking. So,
right. So that is a type of collaboration. That is a type of collaboration. You're just, yeah, collaborating with the bigger organization to still have a program intact. So it's a little bit different. You're right. Yeah.
Everybody gets.
Yeah, this was the first year that we actually funded, we had two separate organizations that we funded in the past. They came together and submitted one collaborative grant that supported sort of the overlap of population. It's a brand new pilot program, has sketchy data based a little bit on what each one does. And I funded it, the district, funded it 100%, knowing full well that we don't have a track record. The program is probably going to change midstream, but it's affecting a group. But the most important piece was you had collaboration. You had two groups that have completely separate financial systems, completely different data tracking. They have to get together. It's a total pain in the ass. I get it. I've been a director. You have to create more time. Well, you know what? They got additional funding. You know, as a grant writer, hopefully anyone who's written grants, you know that you're building in some fat into your application. And that's going to sustain some of these groups while they're building their membership, as Jean mentioned. This is going to keep people engaged. It's going to allow them to grow and change and evolve their system, which you have to do. So collaboration, we talked about year of change, year of grant writer. Collaborate. If you're one of those small nonprofits and you can't afford a grant writer, find somebody else that has a similar population or mission that you're serving. Together, you two could probably pony up enough dollars to get your grant writer.
That's awesome. That's good. I'm glad I asked that. That's good stuff. Another thing that comes to mind in that is that I sit on the board as a volunteer for an arts organization. We fund buses to schools, to all the science and arts museums in San Diego. But of course, buses aren't running, so we're trying to, figure out how to fund virtual field trips that are really personal and interactive for kindergartens. I mean, it's K through 12. But part of the conversation is that we need to maybe research grants for sustainability funding. So we're an all volunteer organization. We're very small, very cute and small, but we are going to fall on our ass unless we get somebody that is a staff member to support what we need, because now we're opening up this big new program and we don't have anybody to manage it. So is there an opportunity here where we have seen grants being submitted for, sustainability, for succession planning, for like office space and that kind of thing? Typically that's kind of a no, we want to see how it's affecting the people. Give us the information about the stories and the impact. So can you speak to that just a little bit? Is that a new thing, or is that like still not happening?
I don't think it's a new thing. You've seen a trend in grants for capacity building over the last, decade. If ever there was a good opportunity to make a case for support for capacity, this is that year. Again, if you're brand new and you have no track record and you got nothing, yeah, you're going to have to make a better argument.
Sure.
But for capacity, I think that funders are going to be more open to it. I can't speak to all funders, but I know for a fact that our board members were more willing to talk about supporting capacity. But you better be able to come at us and say, hey, we applied for payroll protection. We applied for this. We've done things differently. We reached out to our individual donor base, and they're keeping us alive to get to this point.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, good. Any other questions for Rachel while we have her? Darren, do you have anything else too that you want to add?
No, Gene, I really thank you for jumping in there and sharing what you shared. That was great, and kind of let us pivot. We just kind of went with it. We've definitely done that. We love to do that with our Eventology Roundtable open discussions. Is it really it affects everybody that's on the call. So thank you so much for doing that. No, Rachel, I don't have any more questions. I shared a story that this morning with a nonprofit I was talking about, only because they were. And it was from a conversation we had, Rachel, yesterday. You know, you were saying how some nonprofits rely so much on program and things that have happened where, you know, you were sharing that there was a nonprofit working with the schools, providing systems to the school. Now that school aren't meeting and they're not in person, that nonprofit is really just kind of out of a lot of money and a lot of funding, and they really hadn't prepared for that. And how you've really got to think out past that and what else are you going to do for money? I definitely don't want this call to all be that, you know, yes, it's the year of the grant writer. I still think, I know it's crazy. I still think we can be successful at doing virtual events. I've seen virtual events work. I've seen virtual events work well, extremely well, and not just the own events I've participated in. You know, my colleagues across the United States, several of them are doing well, and several of them are struggling just to maintain. I think we're still inventing the process. We're still coming up with ways that we can really hit the mark, hit it out of the park, and come up with that perfect scenario. But I love almost every client has a new what if, can we try? Think outside of the box. You know, don't do it just because the Red Cross did it, or, you know, another nonprofit around the corner did it and it worked for them. Don't be that nonprofit. Be individual, be unique, be different. And really, I mean, with what Rachel said, speak to the donor just like you would speak to a funder. I think that's my big takeaway today, Rachel, from what you said. I mean, so many nonprofits are afraid to tell their donors, okay, yeah, we're screwed and we need help. I mean, tell your funders that. Be that bold, be that honest, and tell them what you're going to do with it. You know, we need help, but here's why. You know, whether it's $100 or $100,000, here's what we can do, and here's who we can serve, and this is the impact that we can have if we can do this in the next 3 to 6 months. Make it real. People want to help. There are people that have a lot of money. I still hear so many people say we can't ask our donors for money because they don't have it.
Yeah, if you see, Debbie has a couple of comments that she's added to the chat. And she said it's about, you know, it's about the mission moment. It's telling the mission, and absolutely during those virtual events, the most successful that we've seen are when they're telling the story and they're telling the impact and they're being real about now. Absolutely true. I agree. And then Debbie adds, every minute on air should be about raising money. Make those calls to personally invite and personally ask for going on air. I mean, before going on air. And I think you bring up a good point, Debbie. I know that you have someone else who's working around you, so it's hard for you to unmute yourself, but if you get a chance, you can. And something that we have found with our virtual event that we had at the beginning of October is that I had to dial for dollars. I literally picked up the phone and dialed for dollars for 5 weeks before that thing. And then I showed everyone's name, and I even kind of pre-staged a few of the bigger donors to come on during the show, totally taped, and then give that donation during the program. And, you know, for the idea that it's driving more donation, it's getting the people excited, and they see Mr. Jones made this donation, and so I should too. But it's all pre-planned and pre-done. And I think that, Darren, I want to speak to you about this. I have this like inner struggle because, and Rachel, I know you've seen 100 of these, and you probably 17 of those organizations that you're funding, they probably have a good smattering of virtual events that they're hosting, even though they're also getting money from you guys. And so I want your opinion on this too. What is the 1 or 2 things that people should really do as part of their virtual event? Because what I was talking about with my struggle was, I set it up in the way that we talk about it, Darren. I said, we're going to have a 5-week campaign, and then we're going to have the celebration on October 5th. We're going to bring the chefs in. We're going to bring my CF community. We're going to bring the donors. We're going to have a celebration of all the money that we raised. That was my goal. That was the gist. So, but to Debbie's point, and she's absolutely right, during that celebration, what did I do? I asked for money during the whole thing. So it wasn't like a stewardship event. It was definitely a fundraising ask. So Darren, maybe you can speak to that a little bit. Where can you kind of play both sides?
So from an auctioneer's perspective, I love the auction. I love the fast selling, fast moving. We're going to go on a trip and playing everybody against each other and trying to raise the money. In a virtual world, I hate to say this, all my friends will poke me in the eye, but you don't need the auction. It's not about the trip to Europe. It's about your mission. It's about your moment. When you can tell people the real story, here's what we're doing, and we need money because of this. We need your help. We can't do it without you. Make it about that mission moment. When do you ask? You ask for money right off the bat. As soon as you welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. Hey, look, I just saw $100 coming in from Jennifer. Jennifer, thank you so much. Yeah, so in the chat bar, ladies and gentlemen, you can give through the whole program. You don't have to wait till the end. We're not going to section this out like a gala where they sit down, they have dinner, they do drinks, and we do a couple auction items, and then we ask at the end. Absolutely not. We're doing this online. We're going to ask for money 5 minutes into it, 20 minutes into it, 45 minutes into it, and an hour into it. Definitely all the entire time we're going to ask for that funding.
Rachel, what have you seen work?
Pre-tape it. I'm sorry. We're all sick and tired of Zoom, and I did it today. I started talking. Oh, right, I'm muted. Oh, wait, let me deal with my technology in the middle of my campaign, my emotional appeal. Flat. So yeah, make your ask. If you're gonna acknowledge this amazing donor, client, whatever, spend the time and money and energy to get that person's story really clean. You can't get the emotional appeal of them sitting across from Darren and watching the person cry. Okay, but you can still really get a good video and get a true story and then build around that. So don't let the technology trip you up. Don't try and put bells and whistles. If all you've got is a little tiny smartphone, that's it. Move on, get smart.
I did manage to unmute myself. Dawn's been teaching class, so we have limited bandwidth. This is Debbie. I just worked the arthritis event this weekend with an auctioneer here in Denver. And, they did a lot of things just on point where they had a great message. They had great speakers. They took a little long getting to the ask. I agree with Darren that mentioning this throughout the program instead of waiting till you're 40 minutes in, because we know people dive at 40 minutes. So let's get to it much sooner. I agree with getting as much of it recorded as you can. Your MC and your auctioneer should be live. But the rest of it, get it recorded, get a good quality. And then you don't have to worry, you have an AV partner that is mentioning it, but they had a lot of pre-committed. They probably had, I want to say, about $25,000 in pre-commits. We raised another $27,000 in our broadcast. And that doesn't include the silent auction. They had a silent auction going on, and they had a lot of sponsors. What they didn't do, and I'm going to be, this is not a bang on the executive director. It's the fact that they went from 6 people in the staff to 1. It was all on him. They didn't have the viewership that really I would have thought this group could have had. And it takes those phone calls. It takes those reaching out and making sure they've seen it and that they've gotten registered. They could have done some kind of incentive to get people to sign up early. You know, and again, I know this is because he was one person, but there was no follow-up message when we were all done. And, you know, which I expect when I'm doing a mobile event or doing a virtual, that I'm going to see thank you. And then I'm going to see a message the next day that the auction's going to close at thus and such a time, or giving is remaining open. Who else do you know? And so it's not a bang on that. I don't mean to, it's that bandwidth. I think the stress of him having to put this all together by himself was incredibly, so it takes more marketing, it takes more communication, but the basics of your fundraising are all the same. You know, communicating with your donors. What have you accomplished? What's the need right now? And like I said, as you put your program together, it doesn't have to be long. It just has to be on point. Every moment you're on air should be about why you're there and what you need, and engaging people and calling them out. And, you know, like I said, it just, every one of these I've seen, there are some that I'm like, why are we waiting until we're 40 minutes in before we go to Fund a Need?
Because that's the way they've always done it.
Yeah.
That's the way they've always done it. And they don't want to make that change because they're not comfortable. But you're right, Debbie. And thank you. For those of you who don't know Debbie Ross, she's with Greater Giving. And she's a great partner for any nonprofit offering the support, the technology to do all the things online and virtually. And Greater Giving's taken a lot of steps to expand yourselves. I mean, virtual wasn't really a big deal back in March, and now it's everything. So Greater Giving, a lot like, you know, some of the other platforms, are definitely pivoting and making it easier. And Debbie, thank you so much for joining us today as well.
Sure. Well, I've been on that same learning curve, so I love hearing about other types of fundraising too. So, because I always learn. And how do we tie it in?
That's right. Pete, how about you? Do you have any questions for us, for Rachel or Darren or I, or anybody in the group?
Questions? No, the only thing I could, from my point of view, is to tell you I did do a fundraiser in San Diego. My personal specialty is teleprompting. So when friends of mine in the business that I've known for 20 or 30 years have a perceived, this executive is going to be tough, who do we get? I generally get that phone call, and then I go there and it turns out the executive's a pussycat. So I went to San Diego Zoo, and it was just like y'all have been saying. It's like they hired a band who played for nobody. We were all sitting next to each other. They had an auctioneer, not as good as you, Darren. And not that I know that, but I believe it. And he was, this auctioneer, they had him in a studio at the company that hired me in Vista. And then I was at the zoo rolling the president of the zoo's speech. And it was an ask and a live auction going out over Facebook. Yeah. So that cost was down because I think Facebook was free. And this AV company coordinated the whole thing, cutting between the zoo and the band and me, well, the prez, and then the studio where the auctioneer was doing the whole auction with the slides and showing you what they were talking about. It was fascinating, to be honest with you. It was a job I've had in about 9 months. And, you know, it's like, okay, this is how it's going to be.
Yeah.
And, you know,
tons of work though. Tons of work. I mean, you know, Darren and I kind of have this funny banter because he'll say like, oh my gosh, I think a virtual event is so much more work. And I'm like, what?
Because he's thrown so many events on his own.
Right. Because he's planned them for the 12 months up until, right? Yeah.
I can still hear you both.
We know.
Neither one of you are muted.
Right. Hey, I do want to make a quick point, speaking to Debbie on that example she gave. You know, she had a client, you know, the executive director was the one left. I'm going to venture to guess there's still a board of directors. So I'm going to make the pitch, still having a board, having worked boards, you're on that board. Part of your job is to do fundraising, which means if you're not making the phone calls, if you haven't gotten the the eyes to the screen, whatever, you have failed in your job as a board member. So it's time for them to step up, either write a big fat freaking check and solve the problem, or get out there and start calling your friends, doing the work, being there for logistics. Grow up. If you're sitting on a board, you took on that responsibility. Do something.
Yeah, I came in pretty late. I was hired by the auctioneer to help them. So I didn't do any of the consulting. I can tell you there was one other person that I think was either from National or a volunteer that was working. Didn't seem like there was a lot of work going on. I did a lot of stuff I shouldn't have been doing, but I did it to get through it. I did it more for the auctioneer than the organization. So just making sure that that person came out looking really, really good. But we had a discussion afterwards. Because I'm not doing that again.
Well, and that's the thing, opportunities missed, but then also to your point, so much gets dumped on whoever is there, whatever volunteers or whatever staff is left over. I mean, the lift is heavy, and for what, 12 people to tune in? You know, like, yikes, no, that's not great. I'm so curious how many people watch that zoo. I know that zoo event very well. They marketed the heck out of that thing, and there's no way they spent less than 25 grand to do it, to market it. You know, so I'm curious how many people actually showed live, you know, actually tuned in that time.
We had a little over 100 on our stream, but I still think that could have been, you know, how many normally came to this event? Why weren't they all contacted? Why weren't, so, you know, I think, and this is what I think is even funnier. They had a radio host MC working with the auctioneer, and in following up with the MC, who also donated. I mean, we were all in the room, we all donated, but she goes, yeah, there was something odd about this event. She goes, I brought in a $3,000 granite countertop donation, and I brought in the Tesla drives. And I'm like, you were bringing stuff? Because her husband has arthritis. And because you don't normally, she got the studio donated. I think she donated her time. And then she brought in like 3 large dollar auction items that didn't get showcased the way they should have. So, you know, so, you know, I mean, that the granite thing did go for 3 grand, but there was no other bids on it. So the Teslas should have gone for a lot more than they did, to have the Teslas overnight. And, you know, I look at that and I'm thinking, all right, I'm the outsider looking in, but it yanks my chain, because, you know, I've been doing this now for 13 years, and I'm like, I would have been communicating the heck out of this. So Darren, again, I don't mean to bang on Daniel. I don't know when everything went south on him. But, you know, and they had an incredibly successful event. They did go beyond their goal. So I guess I'm looking at it was successful, but it could have been even more successful. And that's what you look at with every event, live or virtual. What worked? Right. What could we improve the next time? Because this was his first one. And as he says, he goes, I hope I never have to do another one again. But we all know that's not the case.
I know. It's so not. I know. Well, Darren, I see that we're like almost at time, but I do want to let you just kind of give us your one thing that you've seen in the last few virtual events. Like, what's the one go-to move? What's the go-to move right now? I can think of one that I'm hoping you're going to say it, but what's your best play?
The best play? You're talking about a virtual event? Well, there's multiple best plays. I don't know what particular answer you're looking for. We've hit on most of them. Is pre-recording. Pre-recording is huge. Pre-funding, getting as many dollars as you can, and think of that a virtual event really is a performance. You're not necessarily.
Okay, I'll help you.
Okay, let me know what answer you're looking for.
Okay, this is the best way to do this. I already know. So the one that you had 158 people viewing. Yes. How do you think that they got those people there? Sorry, I should have been more specific.
What they did, so that one we had 158 people, and we kept them tuned in because we did giveaways. We did giveaways. We had opportunities. Everybody who was registered, everybody who got into the Greater Giving platform or BidSmart, whoever we used, everybody was registered. And then throughout the night, every time we're asking for money, as soon as we do an ask, it's like, oh, let's do another giveaway. Well, there's a $100 gift card, a coffee cup, and a Starbucks. It was just giving things away. A couple events have had big auction donations that were donated, years ago and never used that we gave away. I mean, you can really prime it, but giving people a reason to stick around and watch, whether it's the old-fashioned put it in a wheel and pull it out, or just call out a name. And Jennifer, you won a $100 gift card, to Amazon. It gets people, like, as soon as they hear you're giving it, and everybody registered, everybody that's logged in, everyone's in the chat bar, online, registered on Greater Giving, you got a chance to win. That kept them around.
Rachel, I know you have something to say about this too. I see you nodding because we talked a little bit about this about the survey. So go ahead and tell us what you think real quick, and then we'll head out.
You know what? It doesn't take much. People like to win a thing. It doesn't matter. Incentivize. Keep people engaged. I had to do a virtual conference, and it was a virtual conference for 2 days online on Zoom. And they kept me engaged because they had a little app that every time you did something, you got put into the drawing. I won a little Kindle, and I won a new fancy Turvis cup. Oh my God, I was so excited. It's stuff. It's stuff I already have. But you know what? It's that competition. It's that game. It's that thing that makes Darren successful when he's doing your event and he gets everybody competitive. You can do the same thing online.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining us today. We're going to have this recording sent out to everybody who registered, because I know we had a lot of people who couldn't attend in person, but they said, will you please record it and send it to us? So Rachel, thank you so much. Rachel Mason, thank you for joining us. And from the Fallbrook Regional Health District, if you guys have questions for Rachel, you can send them to Darren or myself. You have our contact info, Darren at eventologyfundraising.com. Michelle with 2 L's at eventologyfundraising.com, and then we'll decide if your question is worthy of Rachel, and then we'll send it to her.
Or they'll Google me and find my address. It's not that hard.
Yeah. Thank you guys all for being here. Jean, it's always a pleasure. Debbie, thank you for including your great ideas and stuff with us today. Kathy, if you want to unmute yourself and say goodbye. Pete, good job with all you're doing, and good luck. Thanks for all you guys do.
Thank you all.
Nice.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
And then there were 2 of them.